afraid of the dark? Just relax and let the darkness fall over you.
Welcome to Afraidish, a podcast where each month we venture into a new state and take a deep dive into the paranormal and unexplained while enjoying some tasty adult beverages. From ghost sightings to hauntings, urban legends, and cryptids, let's get weird and afraidish together. Hello and welcome to episode 6. I'm Paul.
And I'm Ashley.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
I think from now on, at least until I can get ahead, we're going to do this every other Sunday. That'll give me a chance to get ahead with research and get caught up with what I need to do.
Yeah.
All right. Today I'm drinking another Public House. This one's called Revelation Dry Stout, which is pretty good. Kind of reminds me of...
It's a dark beer.
Yeah, kind of like Guinness.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to have a new segment starting this episode. I like to call 5 Fun Facts.
5 fun facts.
Yeah. This is 5 fun facts about Tennessee.
I love the onomatopoeia, bro.
Yeah. Number 1 is cattle are the most produced ag commodity in Tennessee, followed by soybeans and corn.
You literally just described every state in the Midwest, bro.
Yeah. Well, this state has the most.
Woohoo! Go Tennessee.
Number 2, Great Smoky Mountain National Park is one of the most visited national parks in the United States, often seeing nearly 10 million visitors a year.
Honestly, I'm not surprised, and that is very much a deserved distinction. The Great Smoky Mountain National Park is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen with my own eyeballs.
Yeah.
And I saw it mostly at night.
Nice.
With my grandma, who's from the hills of Kentucky, and she had a lead foot, and you're driving through those mountains, you think you're gonna die.
Nice. All right, number 3. Famous people from Tennessee include Miley Cyrus, Justin Timberlake, Morgan Freeman, Megan Fox, Dolly Parton, Tina Turner, and Johnny Knoxville.
That's a good group of people.
Yeah. Considering God came from Tennessee, Mr. Morgan Freeman. Number 4, Tennessee's capital and second largest city is Nashville, which has a population of 601,222. Memphis is the state's largest city with a population of 655,155.
I would expect Nashville to be bigger than that.
Yeah, that's still pretty big, though.
Yeah.
All right, number 5. The Grand Ole Opry is the oldest live radio show in existence, continuously running since 1925.
Wow.
That's crazy. All right, let's go back in time and get imprisoned with a knowledge about the Tennessee State Prison.
Ouch.
All right, so this history is pretty long, so I might read it a little bit faster than I would normally because I don't want anybody falling asleep. I know some people love the history. Some people are like, all right, fucking get over it now.
So, this is the second time we're recording this episode. We had to stop the first time because I was literally, like, falling asleep. I don't want to offend anybody, but if you've ever read the Book of Numbers in the Bible, that is, like, the most... It's just, like... It's the Book of Numbers. It's just bookkeeping and chronology... Chronology... What?
Chronology?
Chronologizing?
I don't know.
It's just literally like keeping account of the lineage. Like the entire book is like, and Moses begot Abraham, and Abraham begot Isaac, and Isaac begot, and on and on and on and on.
Yeah,
Listening to you.
I get it.
Penitentiary was, wow.
Well, I like to go through from, when it opened to when it closed.
I know, but I was just like, oh my God, this prison has the most history out of anything he could have chosen.
It kind of does. It has a lot.
I'm looking at my story and it's like a page and a half handwritten, and he's got 16 pages typed up.
More like 20, but yeah.
Oh.
All right, let's get into it.
All right. Grab a snack, y'all. This is a longie.
Yeah, it's going to be a longie. In 1796, Tennessee became part of the Union. In 1799, an act was passed giving horse thieves the death penalty.
That seems...
That's pretty hard.
Extreme, even for the times. But, I get it. Your horse was your
vehicle,
everything.
Yeah.
It was everything. It was more than your vehicle, man.
Yeah, it's true.
You plowed your fields.
Yeah.
You didn't have a horse. You didn't have anything.
It's true.
But still, that seems rather extreme.
It is. All right. In 1813, the state legislature passed the first act to raise money for a central prison. The efforts failed with no public support, and less than $2,000 was raised. In 1819, efforts failed again without public support. In his October 5th, 1829 message to the state legislature, Governor William Carroll recommended an overhaul of the state criminal code and the construction of a state penitentiary. The legislature complied with the state-funded act to, quote, provide for building a public jail and penitentiary house in this state, unquote. A site is selected 1 mile southwest of the county courthouse in Nashville, Tennessee. The state selects the Auburn-style prison system, which is based on a prison in Auburn, New York, as it calls for the opportunity to congregate work of the convicts in a factory system. This method was to assist the state in meeting one of the goals in the management of the prisons, that the system costs as little as possible and that it return a profit to the state, if at all possible.
You guys, we're literally witnessing the invention of the for-profit prison system.
Yeah.
And I'm not excited about it.
It's crazy. A 5-person board of inspectors is created by the legislature to oversee prison operations. Here's some names that aren't important. Were elected. The General Assembly was the first commission of the penitentiary, serving with ex officio members who were blah, blah, blah. On January 1st, 1831, Governor William Carroll opened the new state penitentiary. The prison became operational for both men and women. The prison housed 200 cells, a warden's residence, a storehouse, and a hospital. On January 21st, 1831, George W. Cook, a 21-year-old tailor from Jackson, Tennessee, convicted of stabbing and sentenced to 2 years confinement, became the first registered inmate of the state penitentiary.
You think that he was proud of that accomplishment?
I don't know.
Me either.
In 1840, the first female convict was sentenced to the state penitentiary. In 1847, an 8-year-old white boy is sentenced to life in prison for the later deemed accidental murder of his 4-year-old sister. After years of abuse in the prison, the boy received a pardon from Governor William Trousdale in 1850 when he was 11 years old. Available records indicate that this child was the youngest convict to ever be convicted, the youngest convict to ever be sentenced to an adult penitentiary in Tennessee.
So I just want to say something to all the white supremacists and the good old boys out there that aren't listening to this podcast. This is the world that you want to go back to, where 8-year-old children are sentenced to prison for accidentally... Like, what? It's tragic. It is there were 2 tragedies that happened. The little girl accidentally dying, and the little boy, the adults that thought that a little boy was even capable of, like, understanding enough, and that they were like, oh, let's put him in prison with adults.
Yeah, it's crazy. In 1848, inmates were employed in the construction of the state capitol building in Nashville, just like when I talked about Missouri State Prison. They used all the inmates for labor like that.
Yeah.
In 1853, a new wing was built onto the penitentiary to relieve severe overcrowding. In 1858, the state legislature granted the governor the power of executive clemency. In 1863, the Union Army commandeered the state penitentiary for use as a military prison. The prison population triples, worsening an already decrepit situation. During the war, the occupation government of Tennessee leased inmates to the federal government to help pay for its growing debt. One of the prisoners held at the military prison was Mark Cockrell, a local Confederate sympathizer who refused to take an oath of allegiance to the federal government. So, Cockrell's West Nashville property will later be purchased by the state for use as the site of a new state penitentiary. So, since he didn't pledge his allegiance, they just took his property. You okay?
I'm getting heated, man. Like,
I know.
I see where things went wrong. Like, everything that you're saying, I'm like,
I know.
Huh.
It was the times, and it was the shittiest of times. Anyway, in 1865, the state legislature employed 3 directors to coordinate a convict leasing system in order to defray the cost of prison operations. Problems with this system developed, and by
no shit.
Yeah. And by 1867, the state directors recommended abolishing the convict leasing system. However, by 1870, the system was reinstated, of course.
Because it did so well the first time.
Yeah. On October 20th, 1865, Champ Ferguson, a Confederate guerrilla fighter from White County, Tennessee, was executed by hanging on the grounds of the state penitentiary. This was the only execution by hanging within the walls of the penitentiary. Prior to the Civil War, African-American prisoners at the penitentiary rarely exceeded 5%. In 1866, first year after the war, the African-American population jumped to 52%.
You don't say.
It's crazy. By 1869, 62% of the total prison population of 551 inmates were African-American.
Shocking.
Yeah. Thanks to good old racism. In 1871, the first revolt against the convict lease system occurred in Tracy City, Tennessee, when white miners struck the Tennessee Coal Mine and Iron Company for higher wages and an end to the convict leases. This effort failed, and the company was successful in defeating the uprising. This was the first of many such revolts against the system in years to come.
Yeah, because why pay your employees when you can pay the state way less for prisoners?
Yeah. In 1873, a prison work farm for farming and mining was established at Brushy Mountain in Morgan County, Tennessee. In 1877, Governor James D. Porter stated his opposition to the convict leasing system, but the system remained as an economic necessity. A ruling was made to limit competition between convict laborers and the free market system to iron and coal mining. Porter also appealed for a new penitentiary to be built in Nashville to replace the inadequate old facility, but the burden of the post-war state debt prevented any action. Also in 1877, the state legislature enacted minor changes to this law governing convict discipline in the lease system. The new law required each lease camp to name a, quote, whipping boss, who would then be the only person authorized to whip a convict. In reality, this law created even more problems as each camp named a guard to the job who was considered the most brutal in practice. That is crazy, yeah.
Like, obviously, when you create a position like that, they're going to put the meanest asshole in it.
Yeah. That's crazy.
The inhumanity is glaring.
Yeah. In 1879, a crowd estimated at 11,000 followed a condemned murderer through the streets of Nashville to the gallows located outside the city limits to view the execution. Local parents write notes to teachers for their children to be excused from school to attend the hanging.
Yeah, I mean, no, but also, like, that was a thing. These people were bored AF, and, I mean, you look back through the Middle Ages, people, that's a thing that always happened. Like, kids went to public executions.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Sometimes they even executed kids if they were accused of witchcraft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 1883, a legislative act passed allowing deduction of good time account from inmates' original sentences.
So, like, get out early on good behavior?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
In 1885, a legislative act passed allowing convicts good time and diminution of their sentences and providing a statistical table for convict time to allow for the implementation of this act. On July 14th, 1891, 300 miners launched a series of attacks against the Tennessee Coal Mining Company. Mines in Briceville protest low wages, payment for scrip instead of currency, and the use of convict labor. The insurgent miners attacked and held the convict stockades in Briceville and gathered the convicts to be shipped via railroad from Coal Creek to Knoxville. Miners called for intervention by Governor John Price Buchanan, who sent 3 companies of state militia to the area to suppress the insurrection.
Which side were they on?
They were just there to calm down the miners, I guess.
Uh-huh. I'm so confused.
Are you really?
Yeah. That sentence, read it again.
Okay, so the insurgent miners attacked and held the convict stockades at Briceville and gathered the convicts to be shipped via railroad from Coal Creek to Knoxville. So the miners got all the convicts together and shipped them back to Knoxville. Miners called for intervention by Governor John Price Buchanan, who sent 3 companies of state militia to the area to suppress the insurrection.
So, okay, the miners
Called
petitioned the governor to be like, hey, come help us. And the governor's like, sit down, bitch.
I think so.
Gotta love it.
On July 20th, after another outbreak, Buchanan agreed to miners' demands to call for a special session of the state legislature to deal with convict leases. In August, the General Assembly met in Nashville, but failed to accomplish any action dealing with the convict lease system. Miners conducted another raid on the Briceville mine on October 31st, and a raid at Oliver Springs, Tennessee.
What were they raiding exactly? Were they like...
They were trying to deal with the convicts taking their jobs. Because of the convict lease system. Because the state are using the convicts.
Yes. So the miners were trying to go remove the convicts so that they could mine the stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
That's like a capitalist wet dream there. People want to work so bad that they're literally forcibly removing other people from doing the job.
Yeah. In August 1892, miners revolted at 2 sites operated by the Tennessee Coal, Iron, and Railroad Company in Grundy County, the Inman and Tracy City mines. After another attack at Oliver Springs, the outnumbered state militia surrendered. The convicts were shipped to Knoxville, and the prison stockade was torched. With the public perception that Governor Buchanan could not resolve the miners' insurrection in East Tennessee or the failure of the convict leasing system, Buchanan failed to win nomination from the Democratic Party and ultimately failed to win re-election as an independent candidate. The Democratic nominee, Chief Justice Peter Turney of the Tennessee Supreme Court, won the gubernatorial race, pledged an end to the convict leasing and reform of the penitentiary system.
But did he do what he promised? I guess you'll tell us, won't you?
Eventually, I'm sure.
I mean, if it happened, you'd report on it, right?
Sure. I'm just going from what I wrote down, I guess.
Okay.
Also in 1892, one wing of the state penitentiary was officially declared the female department, thus finally separating male and female inmate. However, months later, after the coal miners' uprisings in East Tennessee forced the transferal of male prisoners back to Nashville, causing horrible overcrowding conditions, women were again housed along with male convicts. In 1893, the state legislature passes the Penitentiary Act of 1893, calling for the abolition of the convict leasing system at the end of the current contracts, construction of two new penitentiaries in Tennessee, and the acquisition of lands suitable for the mining of coal in order to keep the maximum number of convicts employed at all times.
So the prison just started their own coal mine.
Yes. The state legislature creates the position of a female matron for the female department of the state penitentiary, however, does not fund the position. It will be 1897 before the new position is filled.
When was the position created again? What year?
In 1893.
1893 to 1897?
Yeah. They're like, we can't afford to fill this position.
So for 4 years.
There was no matron for the female department.
Wow.
Yep.
I love Learning history. I don't know if it makes me feel better or worse about our current government. I feel like it's like the same level of incompetence then and now.
Pretty much. Thanks, Congress. In 1895, Brushy Mountain Prison, located in Petros, Tennessee, was completed. Now, Brushy Mountain Prison is another haunted location in Tennessee, but I'm not going to take the whole month of Tennessee to do prisons. But
please, if there is a god or any, number of gods up there.
I will tell you, Tennessee State Prison is abandoned, and there's no way anybody can trespass. And Brushy Mountain Prison does have ghost tours.
Oh.
So that would be something fun to visit sometime.
Yeah, I guess.
On February 12th, 1898, the new state prison opened to receive prisoners located on 1,200 acres of land in the Cockrell Bend area of Davidson County. The new prison is designed with 800 single occupancy cells. However, on opening day, 1,403 prisoners are admitted to the prison, creating immediate overcrowding, of course. Overcrowding will be a problem for this penitentiary throughout the century. The original state penitentiary off Church Street in Nashville was demolished in June 1898, and materials from the old pen were used in the construction of the outbuildings at the new facility, creating a physical link from 1831 to 1898. These outbuildings housed workshops ranging from soap and tobacco factories, a foundry operated by Duncan & Co., several hosier mills, one operated by Jacob May & Company, a paper box factory, a baby carriage and wicker chair plant operated by the Nashville Chair and Carriage Company.
They're the Nashville Chair and Carriage Company.
Yeah.
Could their name be any more specific? I would love to know. We're like, what do you... So what do you do? I make chairs and carriages.
Nashville Chair and Carriage Company. Yeah. Also, a tannery, a shoe shop, a saddlery, and a commercial laundry.
You know what they say? Idle hands are the devil's playground.
Yes.
Can't keep no criminals idle. Gotta have them making them soap and baby carriages.
I'll get there. An adjacent prison farm of 1,200 acres was designed to provide upkeep for the prison population, as well as work for female inmates and inmates unable to, because of physical conditions or age, to labor in prison factories or at East Tennessee coal mines.
Wait, so they're like, oh, you can't work in a factory, but you can work on a farm.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
I mean, in factories, it's hot and extreme, like, I'm talking, like, extremely hot.
Like, I get it. Back then, a factory would have been like an oven.
Yeah.
I get it. But have you ever been on a farm in July?
Yeah, I mean...
The sun beating down on you. Like, you're a lobster. 24/7.
I don't know, but they made it work, I guess.
It would have been miserable. Either way, like, there's not a scenario where I'm like, that one's nice. Like, they both suck equally.
Yeah.
At that time, I would love to work on a farm now.
Yeah.
My own farm.
The farm operated its own dairy, a cannery for fruit and vegetable processing. Oh, God damn it. Anyways, the farm operated its own dairy, a cannery for fruit and... Fuck me. Between me and the damn dog, I can't talk.
You just can't talk in general.
The farm operated its own dairy, a cannery for fruit and vegetables processing, and a slaughterhouse for livestock operations. The state intended for every inmate to contribute to their own upkeep by forced labor and provide an alternative to idleness and boredom while in confinement. Also in 1898, a separate women's building was constructed on the grounds of the new state penitentiary, built in the northwest corner of the grounds as far from the men's block as possible, surrounded by a strong wood fence. The General Assembly finally funded a matron for the women's department. Mrs. Jenny Campbell was employed as the first matron in 1898. The American Prison Association held its annual meeting in Nashville shortly after the opening of the new penitentiary. The association members were given tours of the facility. Among them was Theodore Roosevelt, who declared the penitentiary would put, quote, Tennessee at the head of the nation in modern prison construction, unquote.
Yeah. I think that means what you think it means, bruh.
Yeah. In 1899, in order to generate income, the state legislature approved a resolution allowing federal inmates from Tennessee and surrounding states to be housed at the state penitentiary. Because why not make it more overpopulated?
Right. We already have too many of our own.
Yeah.
Let's take everyone else's.
Bring more people in. In September 1902, a fire destroyed the chair and carriage manufacturing plant at the state prison, and it was not rebuilt. The inmates employed by the plant are transferred to the coal mines at Brushy Mountain.
There's always more coal to be mined.
Oh, yeah. Officials instituted a grading system for prison inmates at the state prison. Under the new grading system, convicts were given marks for each infraction of the rules. The number of marks given depended upon the seriousness of the infraction. There were 3 grades, upper, middle, and lower. All incoming inmates were assigned the middle grade. Convicts received privileges such as family visits, correspondences, based upon their grade. 16 inmates successfully dynamite a hole in the outer wall of the prison housing unit and escape.
Ha!
One inmate, Ed Carney, serving a 17-year sentence for robbery, was shot and killed by guards during the escape.
I want to be at the staff meeting after that. Like, when the warden's like, now which one of you idiots let those prisoners sneak out all the dynamite into their cell?
Yeah. Yep. Local newspapers carry editorials condemning prison officials for allowing such an incident to occur, quote, within sight of the Capitol, unquote. The editorials call for a complete investigation of the event and prosecution of any official involved in the escape.
Wow.
In 1907, the first juvenile court legislation was passed by the General Assembly. In 1910, the General Assembly modified the criminal code of Tennessee to force all death penalties...
Start sentence over.
Blah, blah, blah. In 1910, the General Assembly modified the criminal code of Tennessee to force all death penalty hangings to be conducted in private rather than in public.
Seems like a no-brainer to me.
Bryce McDonald, an African-American inmate convicted of murder from Madison County, is the first inmate executed privately at the state prison under this new statute. In 1911, the General Assembly enacted a law prohibiting the incarceration of juveniles by statute, anyone under the age of 18 in adult penal institutions. The legislature authorizes the construction of reformatory-type institutions to house and educate juveniles. The Tennessee Reformatory for Boys, called Jordonia, opens in Nashville along with the Tennessee Industrial School and the Tennessee State Training and Industrial School for Colored Boys in Pikeville.
Jordonia.
Yes.
Sounds like something from like a dystopian novel, teen novel.
They had to call it something.
Jordonia.
In 1913, the state legislature enacted major reform. First, it abolished the system of determinate sentencing and established for all offenses a range of minimum and maximum terms to be served for a crime. Secondly, a system of parole was created, authorizing the release of a convict at any time after the service of the minimum portion of his sentence upon the recommendation of the governor and a board of paroles. Thirdly, the administration of the death penalty is changed from death by hanging to electrocution.
Progress?
Maybe?
In like a weird linear...
Yeah. The General Assembly also enacted legislation to authorize the use of convicts on road crews throughout the state. In 1915, the state legislature enacted a bill replacing the Board of Prison Commissioners with the Board of Control. In 1916, the electric chair authorized by the General Assembly in 1913 for executions was installed for the main prison, at the main prison. Its first use occurs on July 13th, 1916, when death row inmate Julius Morgan, an African-American male convicted of rape of a white woman in Dyer County, was executed.
To Kill a Mockingbird?
Yeah. In 1917, the inmate population of the two state prisons totaled 1,989 convicts, with 1,259 at the main prison and 730 at Brushy Mountain. Tuberculosis is a serious problem among inmates, with over 400 with the disease. The General Assembly allocates $41,500 for a tubercular care facility of 200 patient beds. Americans' entry into World War I provides a windfall for Tennessee's prison system, whereas most every ton of coal and every piece of clothing produced by prison industries were immediately purchased for the best prices in its history.
Ah.
In 1918, the Highland Rim School for Girls opened in Tullahoma, Tennessee. Its counterpart, the Tullahoma Training School for Colored Girls, opened in 1921. In 1928, national prohibition against the distilled sale of liquors became a major factor in Tennessee's prison population. Over 200 men were convicted of producing illegal liquor, and just over 100 men convicted for transporting illegal spirits.
Wow, that was quite possibly literally my kin. Although they were from Kentucky, West Virginia area, so maybe not. But
in 1929, the state legislature enacted laws to create the Board of Pardons, replacing the Advisory Board of Pardons. Governor Henry Horton appoints one citizen from each Grand Division to serve on the board. Congress passes the Haas Cooper Act in 1929, regulating the interstate transfer of prison-made goods. This act would be a major influence on Tennessee prison labor throughout the remainder of the century, as it would forbid the sale of convict-made goods on the open market.
Huh.
In 1930, a new building for women prisoners was constructed on the grounds of the state prison in Nashville, approximately 1.5 miles from the men's prison. In 1934, the state legislature authorized funds of the construction of a new modern facility at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. In 1935, the state legislature authorized the purchase of lands and construction of the Fort Pillow State Penal Farm in Lauderdale County. The facility was completed and operating by 1940. In 1937, in response to the Haas Cooper Act, the state legislature passed a law mandating the use of prison-made goods at state institutions, although this is not a requirement of institutions. Also in 1937, the State Administrative Reorganization Act was amended by the legislature, creating the Department of Institutions and General Welfare, which includes the Tennessee Industrial School at the Tennessee State Prison. The Board of Pardon and Paroles was created by the General Assembly. Appointments were made by the governor, and the Board of Chairs is chaired by the Commissioner of Institutions, General Welfare. The state legislature authorizes the construction of a facility for the criminally insane. So yeah, like some of this stuff is like not really important, but I'm trying to, rush through it.
Right.
In 1939, the Department of Institutions and Public Welfare was divided into two separate government agencies. In 1941, with the entry of the United States in the World War II, a severe employment shortage of qualified prison guards occurred within Tennessee prisons. Particularly hard hit is Fort Pillow State Penal Farm in West Tennessee. Inmates were employed in as many jobs as possible outside the security department. So that had to be rough.
Right.
In 1949, the General Assembly placed some employees of the state prison system under civil service procedures, requiring standardized examinations and verifiable skills prior to employment. However, it is decades before political patronage is weeded from prison hiring practices. In 1951, the Tennessee Reformatory for Boys was changed to the State Training and Agricultural School. In 1955, the state legislature reorganized the state's administrative departments and separated the operations of state prisons from state hospitals and mental institutions. The Department of The Department of Correction was created, replacing the Department of Institutions. The legislature also enacted harsher criminal penalties, which increased an already burdened prison system. The prison classification system was created at the state prison. The state training schools for boys are renamed the State Vocation Training School for White Boys, Jordonia, and Colored Boys, Pikeville. In 1957, the state legislature created the Division of Juvenile Probation. The reform of the juvenile rehabilitation system began in 1958. In 1958, the maximum security building was built at the Tennessee Main Prison in Nashville. On November 7th, 1960, William Tynes, an African-American male inmate, trustee on timber duty, convicted of beating and raping a white woman in Oliver Springs, Tennessee, was the last person executed in the state of Tennessee prior to the 1972 United States Supreme Court decision. Tynes was the 125th inmate executed in the history of Tennessee. Is that all? only 125.
Only.
Yeah, only. In 1961, the Tennessee Youth Center in Jolton was founded as a forestry camp for boys.
A forced what?
A forestry camp?
Forestry.
Yes. In 1963, the state legislature created the Division of Youth Services with the Department of Corrections and provided for the office of Assistant Commissioner. Major legislative changes of the Board of Pardons and Paroles. Board increased to 5 members. The first African American is appointed to the board. In 1965, juvenile institutions were desegregated and classified by age.
Makes sense.
Yeah. The Intensive Treatment Rehabilitation Center for Juveniles opened in Jordonia, operated by the State Department of Education Division of Vocational Rehabilitation.
I can't get over that Jordonia.
The state prison school was established and accredited. Mining operations by inmates are abandoned at Brushy Mountain due to unsafe conditions. In 1966, prison cell blocks were integrated at all adult institutions for the first time in Tennessee history. Corporal punishment is abolished for adult inmates. The new Tennessee prison for women in Nashville becomes operational. In 1967, a system of work release was created at the Shelby County Penal Farm. In 1969, 3 adult penal institutions were reclassified. Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary became a maximum security prison or maximum security facility. The main prison in Nashville was classified as medium security.
The main, like the OG original from the pre-Civil War?
Yes. Fort Pillow State Penal Farm was reclassified as minimal security. You'd have to be minimal for that name. Be called Fort Pillow.
I know. I was thinking about that earlier when you first said that. I was like, that's awfully soft for a
It's
prison.
a fort made of pillows.
Right? Do you think that's what the My Pillow guy, Mike Lindell, calls his house? Fort Pillow.
Fort Pillow. Fuck that guy. Anyways, in 1970, the General Assembly passed an act relieving the Commissioner of the Department of Corrections as chairperson of the Board of Pardons and Paroles. The board chairman is elected by its members. In 1971, the Turney Center for Youth Offenders, located in Only, Tennessee. Only Tennessee.
Only Tennessee. Well, you know there's a Hell, Michigan.
Yeah. Became operational. The facility was named in honor of Governor Peter Turney, who in 1893 advocated the rehabilitation of prisoners and the separation of juvenile offenders from adult inmates. The Jordonia State Training and Agricultural School was renamed the Spencer Youth Center. So he did pretty good trying to advocate for these people.
These children?
Yeah, these children, yeah. In 1972, the General Assembly reformulated the Board of Pardons and Paroles. The chairman was appointed by the governor. Members are now full-time professionals appointed by the governor. Labor problems at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary forced the closure of this facility. On June 29th, 1972, the United States Supreme Court in Furman versus Georgia ruled the death penalty unconstitutional. All death row inmate sentences are commuted to life imprisonment.
I think that's the moral thing to do.
Yeah. In 1973, the state legislature enacted legislation imposing a mandatory death penalty imposed on those convicted of first-degree murder. If you were like, wait, I thought the Supreme Court ruled the death penalty unconstitutional the previous year. Well, this legislation was ruled unconstitutional just a year after it was imposed.
Okay, so the Supreme Court outlaws the death penalty.
Right.
But Congress, what was it?
The state legislature. Yes.
Says, fuck the Supreme Court. We're going to kill people anyway.
Yeah, for first-degree murder. It was crazy. Anyways, in 1974, the Department of Correction commenced new prison construction in Memphis and Morristown. Local opposition in Hamblin County forced the cancellation of the project in Morristown. In 1976, the United States Supreme Court ruled Georgia's death penalty constitutional. Several states, including Tennessee, followed suit, modeling their efforts after Georgia's. Brushy Mountain Prison was reopened. The Fort Pillow State Penal Farm, currently the Coal Creek Correctional Facility, was reclassified as medium security.
What was Brushy Mountain classified as then? Was that the minimum security?
No, the minimum was the Fort Pillow.
Yeah, and then
Brushy Mountain was maximum.
And then Pillow went to medium security.
Yes.
So then did Brushy Mountain become minimal?
That's
the question.
I don't know. I think it was maximum. I don't know.
It's really not important.
It's not important. I'm just trying to get through this.
I know. I
hope our listeners are still here. I'm sorry. It's just a lot. In 1977, the Lois M. DeBerry Correctional Institution for Special Needs Offenders opened in Nashville. The death penalty is ruled constitutional by the United States Supreme Court, and the death penalty was reinstated in Tennessee.
What is it with Americans and killing people?
I don't know. It's just what they've always done, and it's not right.
Again, it's what humans have always done.
Yeah.
Look at any period in history. We're just...
Yeah. It's the way life is, I guess.
Patriarchal society. That's the way patriarchal society is.
Yeah. In 1979, the Board of Pardons and Paroles was separated from the Department of Correction and became an autonomous unit. Juvenile offenders were released from most institutions for placement in community-based programs for group or group homes.
Say aluminum.
Aluminium. In 1982, my birth year, after a series of inmate riots over living conditions during the 1970s and 1980s, the federal district court in Grubbs v. Bradley declared overcrowding in parts of the prison system unconstitutional and appointed a special prison master to oversee improvements in the system.
Overcrowding in parts of the prison system?
Yes.
So where was it acceptable to be overcrowded?
I don't know. In 1983, the Spencer Youth Center was reclassified as co-educational.
Oh.
In 1985, the General Assembly was convened in a special session to address prison problems. As a result, the legislature approved the Comprehensive Correction Improvement Act of 1985 that addressed the issues in Grubbs and appropriated over $320 million to improve then current facilities and build new ones. In 1989, the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution opened to replace the aged Tennessee main prison at Cockrell Bend. In 1990, the Spencer Youth Center was renamed Woodland Hills Youth Development Center, Nashville. In June 1992, the Old Tennessee State Penitentiary in Nashville opened in 1898, closed permanently. The following year, federal judge Thomas Higgins ruled that Tennessee's correctional system is in compliance with court order and lifted the court-ordered oversight. All right. That is the history.
Fucking thank God.
Well, here's a couple more fun facts. At least one more. Famously, this prison housed notorious criminals such as James Earl Ray, the piece of shit that assassinated Martin Luther King Jr. After the prison was decommissioned, it was the location for several music videos, such as the country music singer Eric Church's two music videos called Lightning and Homeboy.
I don't know who this person is, and I don't want to know who this person is.
And Cage the Elephant's video Cold, 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 which, by the way, is a pretty fucked up video. I watched the whole thing, and it's kind of fucked up. But it does, in the beginning of the video, show a pretty picture of the front of the prison. It really does look like a castle. In movies such as The Green Mile, starring Tom Hanks and a bunch of other amazing actors such as Bonnie Hunt, James Cromwell, Sam Rockwell, and the late Michael Clark Duncan, and another movie, Walk the Line, the biographical film about Johnny Cash, starring Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon.
I used to binge the shit out of that movie when I was in junior high school.
Movie. Ernest Goes to Jail, starring the late Jim Varney, was also filmed there.
Ernest.
Yeah. I love those movies.
Really? They
do.
They remind me of my step family, and I don't care to relive that time of my life.
And other TV shows and movies were filmed there as well. The prison has been abandoned since its closure in 1992. Since then, this massive complex, also known as the Castle, has been deteriorating and slowly falling apart. The paint inside is peeling off and bubbling on the walls. The floors are covered with dust and dirt. The bars have rusted. The walls are crumbling, and the entire building is riddled with asbestos.
I mean, it sounds sad, like, oh, so sad to see a building decaying like that. But I mean, it was a horrible, 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 horrible nightmare place.
Yeah, it was a place of torment.
Literal torture.
Yes.
On human beings. For doing crimes and stuff, but really, like, there were probably criminals who did things as minor as stealing to eat.
Yeah. And the electric chair is deteriorating in a cell all by its lonesome. Good riddance. So I mentioned the complex being called the castle. Well, it really does look like a castle. I encourage you to go to tnstateprisonfilm.com and watch the short film by Brian Siskind and Jim DeMaine.
Oh, is it the drone?
Yeah, it was filmed using drones. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I caught glimpses of it while you were watching that.
Pretty wild. The prison is owned by the Tennessee Department of Correction. Due to unsafe conditions, they do not allow trespassing. So I discourage anybody to go there.
Yeah, don't be stupid.
But of course, people don't listen. Several people have broken in to get their fix of the spook. The prison was filled with monsters, murderers, rapists, psychopaths, and even people who didn't deserve to be there. Innocent people were wrongfully imprisoned and even put to death or killed by other inmates.
Yeah.
While the most dangerous and truly wicked sat in Old Sparky, many died remorsefully and diseased in a shithole cell, and others died by suicide to escape the confinement of hell.
Yeah.
Even in death, there was no escaping this dismal abyss of a worldly damnation. No wonder why this place is full of so much energy. This energy makes up different types of hauntings in this prison. One is Residual Hauntings, which is like a videotape on a loop, repeating traumatic moments over and over again. These ghosts or energies do not interact or acknowledge anyone. Intelligent Hauntings, which means these ghosts or energies, whatever you want to call them, knows what's happening in the moment. These conscious energies or beings can interact with anyone and anything. And Inhuman Hauntings, which are basically anything that has never walked the earth, such as demonic spirits, which are basic evil demons from the Christian hell, and elementals, which are your basic fairies, gnomes, leprechauns, sprites, pixies, goblins, trolls, banshees, etc. As a matter of fact, we have fairies in our garden, gnomes roaming the lawn, and goblin trolls under our porch. No, of course not. People who have broken into the prison have experienced clanking noises from the cell bars at the other end of the corridor. When they walk down to check out the noise, there's nothing there. Gut-wrenching screams and people yelling can be heard from the cells and from the room where the electric chair is in. Disembodied footsteps and voices echo the halls. So now, listeners, imagine you and a friend are walking down a long hall side by side, looking into every cell, letting curiosity overtake you both, looking in awe at how the inmates lived. How could they endure so much pain and live in literal shit, you thought? All of a sudden you hear footsteps behind you. It sounds like someone is dragging one of their feet behind them, slowly and steady. Step, drag, step, drag, step, drag. You both turn around and shine your light down the hallway. You see nothing. You guys turn back around and continue down the hall. You hear the footsteps again, one foot being dragged. This time the footsteps are a bit faster. You and your friend speed up a little, but the footsteps go faster and faster, trying to catch up. Step, drag, step, drag, step, drag, step, drag. Run! You run as fast as you can to the door at the end of the hall. Step, drag, step, drag, step, drag, step, drag. You look back and no one's there. You still hear the footsteps. All of a sudden you hear screams and banging come from all the cells. You will never escape. He will get you. Comes from cells as you pass them. You get to the door, but it's stuck. You and your friend pull and pull, but the door doesn't budge. The footsteps keep coming faster and faster now. Someone or something is almost at your back. You finally get to the door, and all of a sudden you feel something grab your neck, pulling you back. Your friend grabs your hand, trying to pull you outside. Then something pulls your hair, forcing your head back. Your hand slips from your friend's grip, and you're pulled inside and the door slams shut. No! Then you wake up in your car. which is parked at the Pilot Travel Center truck stop right next to the abandoned Tennessee State Prison. Your friend is right next to you in the passenger seat. You look at each other, both relieved, thinking it was only just a dream. Your friend looks at you with a weird look and tells you there's a huge handprint on your neck. Whatever you want to believe, any of these hauntings could be scary as hell if they're real. If you yourself were to experience any of them, would it make you afraid-ish?
Yeah, I don't intentionally put myself in a position where I could be kidnapped by a demon, so...
Yeah, it's just a story.
I know that.
And I do have an update about the property. On March 2nd, 2020, a massive tornado destroyed the wall. The radio tower is gone. The Victorian architecture is irreparable. The drone video is now the most comprehensive visual document of the historic prison and surrounding complex.
There's plenty of Victorian architecture that isn't attached to literal hell on earth, so I think we're okay.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it for my story.
Awesome.
It was almost an hour long, so...
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So, it's okay, because my story is not... It's not even a fraction of a fraction as long as yours was. In fact, I'm sitting here going, thank God Paul's story was so long, because I wasn't going to have anything else to talk about. So, we are talking about the Carter House this week. The Carter House was built in 1830 by Fountain Branch Carter. Yes, his name was Fountain Branch.
Fountain Branch.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. In Franklin, Tennessee. The home was built in the Federal style. Again, you know, these new Federalists, they really like that, the style of the Founding Fathers. Everyone wants to be like George Washington. The home originally sat on 288 acres of land. On that land, Fountain Branch Carter farmed cotton, corn, wheat, and rye. Carter owned 28 slaves, which I think was very modest for the time.
Yeah.
They lived in 7 cabins on the property. In 1860, Carter's estimated wealth was around $62,000, which is approximately $2 million in today's money.
Nice.
So, I mean, the guy was rich, but he wasn't like $62 million yacht rich.
Yeah.
Or however much fucking Jeff Bezos' new mega yacht is.
Yeah.
Anyway, in 1860, the house and its many acres were occupied by Union General Jacob D. Cox, who set up his headquarters in the parlor. Allegedly, Carter asked if he and his family should leave, to which Cox replied that there was very unlikely to be any fighting, so you might as well stick around and keep an eye on your property.
Huh.
Well, when the battle inevitably broke out, the Carter family hid in the basement. The battle was fought on the Carter property. The fighting was so close to the house and the outbuildings that there are over 1,000 bullet holes still visible to this day.
Damn.
Yeah. Todd Carter was one of the younger children of the Carter family. They had a lot, so, I mean, he was in there somewhere. He was mortally wounded in the Battle of Franklin. He was found the next morning alive and was brought to the home where he died the following day. The state of Tennessee purchased the Carter House in 1953 to prevent it from being demolished. As far as I could tell, there was no information as to what happened between the Civil War and 1953. So I'm guessing the Carters owned it for a while and then sold it, and it just fell into disrepair at some point in history.
Right.
So then again in 1953, the state of Tennessee purchased it to prevent it from being demolished. They did some renovations, and the home is now managed by the Battle of Franklin Trust, which is the same organization that oversees Carnton Plantation. There's not a ton of available history on the house that I could find. I'm sure, when you go for a tour, they have tons of stories they can tell you. That stuff's not on the internet because they want you to pay for the tour. Unlike with other historic landmarks like Carnton Plantation, I think Carnton Plantation gets more publicity because that's where, like, all the generals were laid out and everything. So more important history happened there, even though people died on the Carter property.
Yeah.
Well, people died on both, but the battle was fought on the Carter property. So anyway, you presented this review to me when I was looking for ghost stories about the Carter house. You read me this review on TripAdvisor. A lovely man named Tim from Winchester, Tennessee, leaves a 5 green dot rating.
It's a 5-star?
They're not stars, they're green dots.
Okay.
Review of Carter House, and he says, my friends and I, Halloween of 2001, went to this house trying to scare ourselves because we had heard that it was haunted. We arrived that night and pulled in the driveway. There was a bonfire going on and 2 guys and a girl in Civil War time period clothing. We got out of the car and they were extremely friendly. They told us that they worked for the Carter house and gave tours during the day. They explained that the house always has kids like us trying to scare themselves on Halloween, so they were there to watch it. They gave us a tour of the outside of the house and showed us the bullet holes. After we walked around the outside of the house, they told us to drive to Carnton Plantation to further give ourselves a spook. We backed out of the driveway and forgot which way to turn. We pulled up the driveway again and there was nothing. No people, no fire, no smoldering ashes, nothing that would give us the inclination that we had spoken to or seen anyone. To this day, my friends and I won't discuss that night.
That's insane.
I mean, cool story, bro, but I mean...
Well, you never know. It could be real. Yeah. I was pretty skeptic when I first read that review, too. I was like, seriously?
I mean, they didn't go into like a ton of unnecessary detail, so it could be true. The best way to spot a lie is when like there's detail that's not necessary because they're trying to build a world.
Right.
So like there wasn't a ton of that in the review, but still I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like paranormal shit is pretty rare. It's not even it doesn't happen as frequently as ghost adventures and ghost hunters would want you to believe. And it certainly doesn't happen like that. I think those kids were just probably high.
Yeah.
And when they turned back around, they didn't see a bonfire because maybe it was the next day. I don't know. But anyway, other guests report apparitions appearing in photographs. There are tons of photos online, and I don't love pictures, especially pictures of reflections in windows.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of alleged apparitions of reflections in windows where to me, it's obvious it's a tree, but maybe I'm a skeptic and maybe the ghost just isn't showing itself to me. But I digress. Some people report a woman speaking to them. Sometimes she will even carry on a full-on conversation with anyone who will listen. Quote the article that I was reading. Reports of seeing Todd Carter are really common, especially sitting up in his bed where he passed away. He doesn't really do anything other than that. Some say that they see one of the Carter's daughters running through the yard, just kind of in between buildings and things. And, of course, others report seeing slaves in the windows of some of the outbuildings, especially those that were more likely to have been slave quarters. So that is the Carter house. Not the most interesting story, but I think we all needed a little bit of a breather after Paul's biblical chronology.
That was, I think, the fastest I've ever talked.
This is true.
Holy shit.
Are you okay, man? Do you need an oxygen tank?
I think so. I think it's time for bed.
You want some weed?
I'll probably take a gummy. I don't know. All right. That was actually good. I liked it. That review, though, I don't know about that.
Yeah. I don't know. Like,
who's to say? I mean, they could be real.
Right.
Like I believe when you talked about Carnton, when they threw their hats up in the air and they disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
It's something similar. I mean, did that truly happen?
But it's entirely possible that perhaps that was a residual haunting.
Yeah, it's true.
Although, supposedly the guy did carry in a conversation where they talked about, like, their guns and shit.
Yeah.
But it still he could have just been reacting to a residual haunt, and it just happened to make sense.
Right.
You know? Who knows? Again, like, I'm not one to tell someone that their experience didn't happen, but at the same time, I'm a believer who is skeptical.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of batshit crazy people out there. And there's a lot of people who do it to be malicious, to make the rest of us look batshit crazy.
Yeah.
So, anywho.
All right. Please rate and review. Please at me anywhere.
Please beg.
If you have any stories or requests or of anything you want to hear about, or if you know anybody who does, please email us at afraidishpodcast@gmail.com, Instagram and Facebook at afraidishpodcast, and Twitter at afraid_ish. All the links will be in the show notes.
And if you want to see pictures of really cute baby chicks, you should follow Afraidish Podcast on Instagram, because those are basically the only pictures Paul's taking right now. He's a total bird dad.
Yeah, I am. And I think I'm going to post little videos and more pictures so you guys can actually get to know me, because I want to really get into this thing. I know I haven't been posting much lately, but
yeah, you've also been working a lot.
Yeah, and warmer weather means more yard work and more outdoor stuff, which I'm not complaining about, which is I need the exercise.
Yeah, but then there's also, like chicken emergencies. And...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about it?
No.
Okay. Anyways, do you have anything else?
Nope. Follow Afraidish Podcast on Instagram.
All right. And as always, don't be afraid of the dark.
Be afraid-ish of what's in it. See ya.
See ya.